Good afternoon and welcome. This webinar is a collaboration between the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs, VA Center for Faith-Based and Neighborhood Partnerships, CFBNP, Veterans Health Administration, Office of Mental Health and Suicide Prevention Education and Training Office. My name is Nicholas Walters. I am one of the outreach specialists in CFBNP, and I will be your moderator this afternoon. Everyone's mic has been muted. If you have any questions during the presentation today, please type it in the Q&A box to the right of your screen. I will read the questions aloud at the end of the presentation, and the presenter will provide a response. This presentation is not available after the webinar, but a handout is available with all the resources Ms. Mells will speak about today. This is a live recording. I would like to thank Ms. Lillie Mells for this collaboration. We are grateful for your time today, but before we get started, I would like to introduce Mr. Conrad Washington, the Director of the VA Center for Faith-Based and Neighborhood Partnerships. Mr. Washington retired from the United States Marine Corps with 20 years of active service with a combat tour in 2004 in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom. Mr. Washington is a minister actively serving and currently finishing his master's degree in divinity, pastoral studies with the Moody Theological Seminary. He also holds a master's degree in business management from the University of Redlands and a bachelor's of science degree in education from Southern Illinois University, Carbondale. Additionally, he is a graduate of VA's class of 2017 Virtual Inspiring Leaders Program. At this time, I give you Mr. Washington.
Thank you, Nicholas. I appreciate it. Thank all of you for joining us today. And again, I will say Happy New Year to you as we all get going back in the saddle here. I want to also thank Lillie for joining us. We appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to share your knowledge with the viewers today. So we thank you very much for that. As we get going, today is a sensitive topic, and I don't want to steal Lillie's thunder, but she will tell you how important suicide prevention is, that it's a national health crisis, that it's preventable. She'll give you numbers to call. She'll talk about the 988 number, and I will emphasize the Veteran Crisis Line chat text, which is 838-255. And just as important, I want to share with you all that suicide has no respect for persons. It doesn't matter your title, your color, your religion. It affects us all. And I'm not going to mention the names of those who were affected by suicide, but we know that there have been many recently who have taken their life as a result of suicide. And so we know that this is important for us all to help out and to connect with each other and do little things that may be helpful. And she'll talk about some of those protective factors today. So thank you all very much for joining us, and we appreciate it. Back to you, Nicholas.
Thank you, Mr. Washington. At this time, I would like to introduce Mr. Lillie Mells, who will be providing today's presentation. Please read a summary of her bio to the left of your screen. Lillie Mells is a licensed clinical social worker with over 20 years experience. She has worked in various capacities to include child abuse, domestic violence, and substance abuse. Lillie is an Air Force veteran and has served as Director of Psychological Health for Virginia Air National Guard. Lillie has been with the Department of Veterans Affairs since 2013, working in suicide prevention. Currently, she is the Education and Training Program Coordinator at the Office of Mental Health, Suicide Prevention and Veterans Affairs Central Office. At this time, I give you Ms. Lillie Mells.
Good afternoon, everybody. I want to say hello, and I'm going to try and work this camera. I don't know if it's going to be working too well today. I may have to go offline with the camera, but I am delighted to be here, and I just thank CFBNP for having me here and doing this collaboration. It has been wonderful, and just being able to get the message out to you all about suicide and suicide prevention. So I'm going to go ahead and start my briefing. I am going to turn off the camera. I'm getting a little bit of feedback with the bandwidth. So Nicholas, you can go ahead with the slides. Thank you. So before we begin, I always like to say that suicide is an intense topic for some people. So if you need to take a break or step out, please do so. We're not going to get into any gory details or anything like that, but sometimes just bringing up the topic alone can bring up a lot of emotions and feelings and thoughts for people. So if you need to talk to someone, please reach out to the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, or you can reach out to the Veterans Crisis Line. The new number now is 988. So you don't have to go through the 1-800-273-8255. You can just dial 988. And for service members and veterans, they just press 1. Everybody else, you will be connected to a crisis responder. So if you need to do that, please do so. And I'll talk a little bit more about 988 a little bit later. Next slide, please. So this is what we're going to cover today. Facts about veteran suicide, common myths and realities, and then our VA introductory suicide prevention training, which is S.A.V.E, S-A-V-E. We'll go over those steps, and then I'll give you some resources that you can utilize for yourself and to help others. Next slide. So by participating in this training, you'll have a good understanding of the scope of suicide within the United States. You'll know how to identify a veteran who may be at risk for suicide and know what to do when you do identify a veteran or anyone at risk for suicide. So that's our goal for this training today. So my first question, before I get into the briefing, I do like to ask this question. How many military folks do we have in the audience? If you can just drop in the chat whether you've served, Army, Navy, Air Force. So any Army folks in the audience, go ahead and type in the box if you're an Army folk. It's just great to see who we have online. Any Navy folks? Any Marines? I know we have Mr. Washington there, but any Marines online? Okay. Any of my brothers and sisters in the blue, Air Force? Okay. What about Coast Guard? And then our Guard and Reserve. Great, great, great. The reason I like to ask that question before we start is just to know who's online and really thank everybody, because I'm an Air Force veteran, and I will tell you this, you really have a deeper appreciation for all the branches of the services, especially when you've served alongside each one. And I deployed and I served alongside each branch, and you just have a deeper appreciation. So just wanted to acknowledge that for folks on the line. Okay, so the next question is, what is your biggest question about suicide and talking to people in crisis? What is your biggest question about suicide and talking to people in crisis? So I want you to hold on to the answer to that question, but think about it. And then hopefully by the time we get through the end of this briefing, that question would have been answered. Okay, next slide. So now we're going to go into some of our facts about suicide. So suicide, as Mr. Washington has already stated, it is a national public health problem. It's a national public health crisis as far as the Veterans Affairs is concerned. Next slide, please. There's rising rates among the general population as well as veterans. And I will go out on a limb to say, now, even though this slide says that approximately 135 individuals are impacted by suicide, I will venture to say that it may be even more than that. When you think about the individual, their families, their friends, their associates, their coworkers, people in their neighborhoods, the grocery stores, pharmacies, just community centers, their churches, just how many people are impacted by one death from suicide. So I think it's probably a lot more than 135, but generally we could say at minimum there's 135 that are affected. Next slide. So suicide is often the result of a complex interaction of risks and protective factors at the individual, community, and societal levels. There's no one single issue that we can say is the cause of suicide. It's usually a combination of things. One of the things that we look at in the medical arena is risk factors. and protective factors. So risk factors are those characteristics, those things that increase the likelihood of suicidal behavior. Those are those challenges, those obstacles, those stressors that the individual is going through. Protective factors, these are things that can help offset the risk factors. These are skills, these are things that people use as buffers that can help them navigate when they are experiencing stressful situations and challenges and obstacles. And so in order to prevent suicide, we want to increase the protective factors and decrease the risk factors at all levels throughout the communities nationwide. Next slide. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about those risks and protective factors. So here we have this list. Risk factors on one side, protective factors on the other side. Understand that this is not an all-inclusive list. These are some of the main ones that we've seen, but believe me, we can add many more to this list, many more. But we're just going to start with these few that we have right here. So prior suicide attempt. So someone who's had a prior suicide attempt, it puts them at a greater risk for suicide than someone who has never had a suicide attempt. So that's why it's a risk factor. Someone who has had an attempt, it just puts them in that limelight as at a greater risk than someone who has not. Mental health issues. So when we talk about mental health issues, we're talking about those untreated mental health issues. So when people are dealing with anxiety, depression, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, all these things, if they go untreated, it puts you at a greater risk. It does put you at a greater risk. Okay. And there are people who have been walking around for years with untreated mental health issues. Okay. Substance abuse. So anytime you engage in substance abuse, substances alter our judgment, they alter our mood. And anytime you engage in an activity that's going to alter your mood and your thought process, it's going to put you at risk for suicide. Next, access to lethal means. Now, when we talk about lethal means, we could mean medications, we could mean weapons of different types, and firearms. And I will tell you, when you have a combination of depression, mental health issues, substance abuse, and you have access to lethal means, it definitely puts you at a risk for suicide or at a greater risk for suicide. Next, recent loss. So when we talk about recent loss, this could be loss of limb, loss of life, especially when we're talking about people who are near and dear and close to us. So when you're experiencing loss, it does put you at a greater risk for suicide. Legal or financial challenges. And this is huge because when people are facing legal or financial challenges, sometimes they may even be facing jail time. And for many people, just the thought of having to be in prison is enough for them to start having suicidal thoughts and actually engage in suicidal behavior, as well as financial challenges. Think about losing your home, losing your job, all those kinds of things. It puts people at greater risk for suicide. Next, relationship issues. Now, when we talk about relationship issues, you may ask, well, why is relationship issues up there? I will tell you because relationship issues is one of the bigger ones when it comes to suicide and suicide risks. Because when you have a failed relationship, many times it can feel as if you're going through the grieving process, as if you're going through an issue with someone who has died. And when you're going through the grieving process and you're going through a relationship breakup, it's almost the same issues that you're dealing with. Some is shock, denial, anger, embarrassment, frustration, shame, all of these things. And so it feels like you're going through the grieving process. And that's why it puts people at risk. Unemployment. So when you're unable to support yourself and your family, it definitely puts you at a greater risk. And then homelessness, being out in the streets in the elements, feeling worthless. There's nobody who's willing to take me in. There's no place I can go. It definitely puts you at a greater risk for suicide. Now, when we move over to the other side of the chart, we're looking at protective factors. And as I said earlier, these are those buffers. These are those skills, those tools that you can use to help you navigate through those crisis situations. Access to mental health care. So you're always going to be in a better position when you have access to mental health care. So when you're able to get treatment for the depression, get treatment for the anxiety, get treatment for the bipolar disorder, it's definitely going to put you in a better position than someone who's not being treated for these things. Sense of connectedness. So now when we talk about connectiveness, especially our military folks, when you serve in the military, there's a sense of connectedness when you're behind those gates. You know what unit you belong to, you know your mission, you know your purpose. So you really have that connectivity there. And especially folks who are long distances from their families. Some people are stationed, across the country. Some people end up on the West Coast and they're from the East Coast and vice versa. And they're a long way from their family. And so they really get connected to their unit and their place of employment because it is the military. Okay? Problem solving skills. Now, I will tell you, these are skills that we didn't learn as children. And as Mr. Washington can attest to, in many of these seminars I have said, I'm a gal from New York City, and we didn't learn problem solving skills. There was only one way we knew how to solve a problem. Can anybody guess what that was? One way we knew how to solve a problem. You can drop it in the chat. Our way of solving a problem was putting your fist up and fighting. Now, I will tell you, yeah, when you're young, that may work to a certain degree, but certainly not at my age. You can't be bucking up and putting your fists up every time you have a problem to solve. And so we have to come up with better ways and skills and tools to use to solve problems. And the key thing is that if we learn these things early on, we have a better outcome for the future. So problem solving skills is definitely key. Sense of spirituality. Now, this is very individualized because how someone engages in spirituality may be different from how others do it. Some people actually engage in formal religious practices. Some people will actually go to church. Some people will meditate. Some people will pray. Some people will read the Bible. You have to do what works best for you. So there's no one slate for everybody. You have to do what works best for you. Mission or purpose, that goes back to that connectivity. So when you're serving in the military, there is a mission and there's a purpose. And you know what the mission is, you know what your purpose is. Sometimes when folks transition out of the military, it's not so clear as to what your mission or purpose is. And so many times people can feel alone, not really sure what they should be doing. And think about it. If you join the military at 18 years old and you spend 20 years in the military, that's half of your adult life. So when you get out of the military, you kind of feel like, okay, what do I do now? This is the only life that I know, So you have to make sure that there's some mission and purpose in your life beyond the transition of getting out of the military. Next, physical health. When we talk about physical health, we have to really take care of our temples. There's nothing worse than walking around with pain and untreated ailments daily. It's not a good position to be in. So we have to make sure that we're taking care of those annual checkups. We're taking care of those appointments and those issues that are bothering us. There are people who will just suffer in silence, but we don't have to. We don't have to. Okay. Employment. So employment is a protective factor because it's always positive if you can sustain yourself and support yourself. You can support yourself, you can support your family, you can actually engage in activities that you want to engage in. When you're unemployed, it's very difficult to go home and look into your family's eyes and know that you can't feed them, you can't clothe them, you can't house them. That's a very difficult position to be in. So it is a protective factor because it can help you navigate through life and take care of the responsibilities that you have. Last on the list, social and emotional well-being. So when you're making that transition out of the military, you want to stay connected. You want to get involved. A lot of us want to continue to help service members. We get employed at agencies that help veterans or active duty members, including the VA and some other agencies out there. You want to make sure that you're doing something positive, that you're doing something worthwhile. So you want to stay connected and do something. You know, just because you're retired doesn't mean that you just have to sit home and do nothing. There's plenty of opportunities people can get out and volunteer or even just work part-time. And to be honest, you know, people actually do better when they're actually working, even if it's part-time or even volunteering. Because when you get outside, you're engaging with people, you're stimulating your mind, you're talking, you're figuring out what the latest things that are going on. Now, if you sit in your house all day long, you're not getting that interaction. You're not getting that social interaction. So it's always a plus to be vested and involved, and it increases your emotional well-being as well. Next slide. So now we're going to take a look at some of our statistics. This is from 2019. We do have some more current statistics coming out, but we're going to take a quick look at these. So this is the percentage of suicide deaths and methods involved from 2019. And I will tell you, the numbers haven't changed that much. When we look at the methods, we're looking at firearms, we're looking at poisoning, we're looking at suffocation, and then other methods, it could be a variety of things. It could be jumping from a height, you know, those type of things. But if you look at the number of non-veteran adults using a firearm, it's almost 48%. That's using a firearm. Veterans, 69.2%, almost 70%. Non-veteran women, 31%. Veteran women, look at that number. Almost 50% of veteran women who died by suicide are using a firearm. Non-veteran men, 53%. And look at the veteran men. Over 70% are using firearms as a method of suicide. So one of the things that the VA has done is that we started to boost up our education about lethal means safety, and safe firearm storage. We had to, because these numbers are staggering. They are staggering. And so we had to make sure that people understand the importance of it. We had to make sure that veterans understand the importance of it, providers understand the importance of it, and families understand the importance of it. Next slide. So lethal means safety. What is lethal means safety? So in the context of suicide prevention, its safe storage of lethal means is any action that builds time and space between a suicidal impulse and the ability to harm oneself. So I'll repeat that. It's any action that builds in time and space between a suicidal impulse and the ability to harm oneself. And that's the whole key in a nutshell. We want to make sure that there's time and space in between when that person has that thought and when they act upon that thought. So effective lethal means safety education and counseling. It's collaborative, it's veteran-centered, and it respects the important role that firearms and medications play in veterans' lives, and is consistent with their values and priorities. And so when we talk about that, in the past, if we were talking about lethal means safety, anytime someone was at risk for suicide and they had a firearm, the initial thought was confiscate that weapon, they never get it back. And what we found is that that didn't work. So people stopped sharing that they had firearms because they knew it was going to be confiscated. So we had to think, put yourself in that person's position. How can we best help them? We have to meet them where they're at. So one of the things that the VA has done is that we started to educate people. Okay, we don't want to take your firearm permanently, but how can we get you to safely store it until you can get through this crisis? Can we get you a gun lock? Can you turn that firearm over to a trusted friend or family member? Can you lock it up in a lockbox? Can you store it? Can you give the key to someone else? Those are the types of things that we had to do. And what we found is that that worked better versus just saying, you know, we're going to confiscate that weapon and never give it back. We have to remember we're in a country where people feel they have the right to bear arms and they're not readily going to turn over their weapons. But I think if we approach it in a way, let's get you through this crisis. Let's lock it up. Let's keep it safe and secure until you can get through this crisis. And that has seemed to work better. Next slide. So when we talk about the time to act and the decision, most suicidal crises are brief. From the time from decision to action is usually less than 1 hour. And we looked at a couple of studies. So the time was less than 5 minutes and 24% said that they attempt. Less than 20 minutes, 48%. Within an hour, 71%. So what that told us is that building in time and space between the impulse to act and the means to harm oneself, it saves lives. And so when some suicidal crises last a long time, most last minutes and hours. But we can intervene in that. And that's what we have done, and that's what we continue to plan on doing. Intervene, try to get that person to get help, get that person to safely store that weapon. Okay, next slide. So we did find that lethal means safety does work. Reducing access to lethal suicide methods is one of the few population level interventions that has been shown to decrease suicide rates. And we do know that about 90% of people who survive a suicide attempt do not go on to die by suicide. So that's a good thing. So what we've done is we've collaborated with the veterans ahead of time, their family members, their providers, to make sure that they understand the importance of lethal means safety and storage. And if we can do that ahead of time, we have likely prevented suicide for the rest of their lives. And so that's why we have foot stomped the education of not only the veteran, their family, as well as the providers. Next slide. Now, suicide is preventable, despite what you may hear in the community, what sound bites you may hear on TV, radio, it is preventable. So now get ready, folks. I'm going to ask you guys some questions. I want you to type your answers in the chat box and we'll kind of go from there. So we're going to go over some common myths and realities. So this is my first question, and I need you to drop in the box, myth or reality. People who talk about suicide are just seeking attention. Is that a myth or is that reality? Type it in the box. Is that a myth or reality? People who talk about suicide are just seeking attention. So let me see what I see in the box. Okay. I see lots of myths. You guys are doing great. Next slide. Next slide. So, no matter how jokingly or casually said, suicide threats should never be ignored, and they may indicate serious suicidal feelings. So someone who talks about suicide provides others with an opportunity to intervene before those behaviors occur. So let me give you an example of that. So let's say you have your friend John. John is going through a divorce. He is stressed out. He's going to have some financial issues. He's got to pay alimony. He's got to pay child support. He's got a lot going on. He's got to move out the house. He's got to find somewhere else to live. He is stressed out to the max. You meet up with John for lunch. As you're walking, John says to you, I am so fed up with this divorce. I can't take it anymore. I should just jump in front of that bus. Now, John may not have plan or intent to actually kill himself, but clearly he's having thoughts and he is overwhelmed with his situation that's going on. Now, you could say, John, don't worry about it. Let's have a beer at lunch. That's not going to help John because you have the opportunity right there to intervene with John. John, what's going on? Are you having thoughts of wanting to kill yourself? This is your opportunity. And like I said, he may not have a plan or intent, but it gives you the opportunity to assist John because clearly he's overwhelmed. Next slide. So your next question is, the only one who can really help someone who is suicidal is a mental health counselor or therapist. Is that a myth or reality? The only one who can really help someone who is in a suicidal crisis is a mental health counselor or therapist. Okay, I see some myths in the box. Okay, you guys are doing good. You're doing good. Okay, next slide. So special training is not required to safely raise the subject of suicide. So even getting back to John, you don't have to be especially trained in mental health. Just recognizing that he is in a situation where he may be having some thoughts about wanting to kill himself. So helping someone feel included and showing genuine heartfelt support can also make a big difference during a challenging time. So clearly with that example, John is experiencing a challenging time. And just by you asking him a few questions, he will know that you are there to support him and offer some help. Next slide. So now I'm going to go over the steps of S.A.V.E. Next slide. So S.A.V.E. is what the VA teaches communities to do, how to help veterans and people at risk for suicide. So it's going to help you act with care and compassion if you encounter someone who's in a suicidal crisis. You don't have to remember all of this, and we're going to give you some resources. But S, signs of suicidal thinking should be recognized. So just like John, he's telling you he's got all these things going on and he could just jump in front of that bus. You want to be able to recognize those signs. You want to ask the most important question of all. So I'm going to ask you all that. What is the most important question of all? Type that question in the box if you know what it is. What's the most important question of all? And I'm going to let you guys think about the answer to that question, and then I'll come back to it when we get to the A. Validate that person's experience. I can't tell you how important it is when you validate someone. You make them feel like they're important, that their opinion matters, that they matter. Encourage treatment and expedite getting help. So that's what you want to do. So just like with John, when he's telling you all these things, you want to make sure that you encourage him to get help and expedite getting treatment. Next slide. So S, signs of suicidal thinking. You want to learn how to recognize these signs. Hopelessness, feeling like there's no way out of this situation. And we got a lot of hopeless people walking around because they feel like there's no end to their situation. There's no end to their stress, their struggle. And they begin to feel like, there's no way out of their situation. So we want to be able to recognize that. Anxiety. Now, when we talk about anxiety, it's that feeling of nervousness. Some people will have physical symptoms. Some people will have sweaty palms. Some people may start to feel claustrophobic. Some people may be nauseated. Okay. And so when you have untreated anxiety, it puts you at risk. It really puts you at risk because you've got all this stuff going on and there's no treatment for it, or you're not getting treatment for it. Okay. So anxiety, agitation, sleeplessness or mood swings, feeling like there's no reason to live. And that's going back to that hopelessness feeling, the rage or anger. And when we talk about rage or anger, usually rage and anger is usually a mask for something else. And so what I will say to you is that when people exhibit a lot of rage and anger, you really have to look at what's beneath all of that. Many times people are taught emotions. And so some of those emotions are hiding other emotions. So I can show the rage and anger because I'm really sad and depressed. I really want to cry, but because I was taught not to cry, it's easier for me to get angry, and show that anger and rage versus cry. But when we peel back all those layers of rage and anger, we usually can find some mental health issues under there, depression, anxiety. We usually can find a lot of that underneath. Engaging in risky activities without thinking. So you may see a lot of this. People will be on motorcycles, weaving in and out of traffic at high rates of speed. I've seen people with no helmets on. I mean, you will see a lot of that when they feel like they're at a point where they just don't care anymore. So they will start doing those risky activities and engaging in risky activities without thinking. Increasing alcohol and drug use. Now, I mentioned this earlier. Anytime you engage in mood-altering substances, it's definitely going to put you at risk for suicide. Okay? Definitely. And withdrawing from family and friends. Next slide. So the presence of the following signs require immediate attention. So thinking about hurting or killing themselves. And maybe John was having a brief thought when he said, maybe I should just walk in front of that bus. It requires immediate attention. What's going on, John? Looking for ways to die. And believe me, there's 1,000,001 things that you can do to the 10th power. Okay? Talking about death, dying, or suicide. And then self-destructive or risk-taking behavior, especially when it involves alcohol, drugs, or weapons. We've seen that scenario. Someone is depressed. They've got a lot of issues going on. They decide, you know what? I don't want to feel this way anymore. So let me either get high or drink my troubles away. Well, remember, it goes back to mood-altering substances, and it also alters your judgment. So when you're engaging in drugs and alcohol and you're depressed and you got all these issues going on, your judgment is going to be off. Someone in that state may say, you know what, this is a good time to clean my gun. Well, guess what happens when you pull that gun out? I'm just so upset and depressed. Maybe I should just use my gun because your judgment is off. Your judgment is off. Okay. Next slide. Asking the question. Know how to ask the most important question of all. So I saw a couple of the answers in the box. I think one person may have put the right answer in there. And so let's go to the next slide. So the question is, are you thinking about killing yourself? That's the question that we want to ask. We don't want to ask, are you having thoughts? We don't want to ask if you're going to hurt yourself. We don't want to ask if you have a plan. The reason we don't want to ask those questions and we want to ask this question is because we want to make no mistake. We want to be clear as to what we're asking that individual and get the correct answer. Because if you ask me, are you thinking about hurting yourself? Well, hurt for one person could be something totally different for another person. So that's why we want to be clear. We don't want to say hurt. We don't want to say plan. We want to know if you're going to kill yourself. There's only one definition for kill. And so that's why we want to ask that question that way. Next slide. So when we ask the question, there are a couple of parameters that we want to keep in mind when we ask the question. So we do want to ask the question if we identify the warning signs and symptoms. So going back to John, we've identified John is going through legal issues, financial issues, relationship issues. He's got 3 top issues right there. And then he made a statement. So clearly we want to ask John that question. Okay? John, are you thinking about killing yourself? And remember what I said earlier, he may not have a plan or intent at that moment, but clearly he's overwhelmed and he's struggling. Now, you do want to ask the question in a way that it flows naturally in the conversation. So let's take John again. You meet up with John, you're getting ready to go for lunch, and he says, yeah, I met with the divorce attorney. We're going to have to split up our assets. I moved in with a friend. I'll get to see the kids every other weekend. And so he's giving you this information, and you just say to him, John, are you going to kill yourself? Well, that may not have come out in the right way because he didn't give you any indication that he wanted to kill himself. Yes, he's sharing with you some of the stressors and challenges that he's dealing with, but it wasn't like the other scenario where he said, I just can't take it anymore. I should just jump in front of the bus. Okay, so we want to make sure that the question flows in the conversation and that it comes natural. Now, there are things that you don't want to do. So you don't want to ask the question if you're looking for a no answer. We can use John again. And if John said to you, I could just jump in front of that bus. If you say to John, you're not going to kill yourself, are you? Well, you just told him he's not going to. So he's not going to answer you honestly. If I tell you you're not going to, that means the answer is no. So another example would be, my daughter, uh, Conrad, you've heard this story. She likes to wear those shoes, Crocs, Crocs. I don't like those shoes. I don't think they belong outside. I think they belong on the beach. That's just my bias. But every opportunity she gets, she wants to wear those shoes to school. So what happens is she'll put on those shoes and I'll look at her and I'll say, Nicole, you're not wearing those shoes outside, are you? And her response is, no, because I just told her she's not going to. Now, if I wanted her to wear the shoes, then I would say, oh, Nicole, what shoes are you wearing today? And then she would pick out the Crocs. But if I say, you're not going to wear those shoes, I've told her that she's not going to wear them. I've given her the no answer. So it's the same thing when you say to John, John, you aren't thinking of killing yourself. You're telling him he's not thinking of it, but he's not telling you that. So we want to make sure that we ask the question where they can give us the honest answer back. We don't want to wait to ask the question when someone is halfway out the door. I can't wait till my daughter's at the bus stop for the school bus and say, you're not wearing those shoes to school. It's practically too late. The bus is coming, you know? And so the same thing with John. You don't wait until you've already had lunch with John. He's getting ready to go back to his office. You're getting ready to go back to your office. And you say, John, are you thinking about killing yourself? Well, what are you going to do now? You want to make sure that you ask this question early enough so that you can actually intervene early enough. Next slide. V, validate the person's experience. I can't emphasize how much that this is very important. When you validate someone, you make them feel like they matter. Their opinion matters. They matter as a person. Their voice can be heard. Many times when people are struggling and going through these crises, many times they just want to be heard. They just want to be heard. I mean, think about the scenario growing up as a child. When you grow up as a child, at least I can recall, maybe being 5 or 6 years old was the first time I heard children should be seen and not heard. That's the first time you're really told, shut up. Maybe it was in a nicer way, but still, you're being told, shut up. Children should be seen and not heard. Okay, so that's the first time you're told to be shut up. Then, as you get older, maybe you join the military. Maybe you had to go to basic training. And guess what happens there? Shut up and color. Shut up and get in line. Quiet. So here again, you're being told, shut up. Now you go into the workforce, and maybe you're not the supervisor. I'm your supervisor, you be quiet. So for many of us, our whole lives, we've been told, shut up, be quiet, be quiet. And many times people just want to be heard. They just want to get some things off their chests. Most of the time they know that there's no one thing that you can singularly do to change their situation. But if you at least hear them out, they feel like I was at least able to express myself. Somebody heard. Somebody understands what's going on with me. Okay? So you want to talk openly about suicide, be willing to listen, allow that person to express his or her own feelings, recognize that the situation is serious because it is. And even with John, he may not have had a plan or intent, but it's serious. It's serious, okay? Don't pass judgment. One thing about humans, human nature, is that we can tell immediately if someone's passing judgment on us. We just have a keen sense and we can tell it right away. And so if people get the sense that you're passing judgment, they're not going to be open. They're not going to share. Reassure them that help is available, because help is available. Okay, next slide. E, encourage treatment and expedite getting help. So what should you do if you think someone is suicidal? You don't want to keep that information a secret. This is not the type of secret that we want to keep. You want to make sure that you act swiftly and you get that person help. Don't leave him or her alone. Okay. And don't think to yourself, oh, they're just in this room. There's nothing in this room. Don't be fooled. People find things. People can do all kinds of things. Just when you thought, like a 2-year-old, oh, there's nothing over there they can get into, they've gotten into everything. So don't leave him or her alone. Try to get the person to seek immediate help from his or her own doctor or the nearest hospital or emergency room. Reassure them that help is available. Have them call the crisis line. All they have to do now is dial 988. You can call for them and get help. Just 988 and then press 1. And even in the civilian sector, the same number, 988, and press, you don't have to press the 1. The 1 is to get connected to the VA and veteran peers. But if you just hold the line, a civilian person will come on and take that crisis information. So it's the same number for all nationally. Next slide. So when talking to a person at risk for suicide, the first thing that you want to do is remain calm. You don't want to get riled up. You don't want to get excited. It's not going to help the situation. Try to remain calm. Listen more than you speak. It goes back to allowing that person to vent a little bit, hear them out, let them express what they need to express. Maintain good eye contact. Don't be looking all around, because people feel like you're not paying attention to me if you're looking other places, if you're looking at your phone and all these other things. Act with confidence. You may not know everything to do, but you can certainly express confidence in doing it. Don't argue with the individual. So stay away from all those controversial topics, and we know what they all are. Politics, religion, abortion, COVID, all these topics, stay away from it. It's not going to help. It's just going to be a losing situation, so don't even go there. Use open body language. Don't be like Macaulay Culkin on Home Alone with the shock face. Use supportive and encouraging comments, but be honest that there's no quick solution, but help is available. Help is available. We've had people call the VA, they're 8 months or so behind in their mortgage. They're going to kill themselves if the VA doesn't pay. We have to be honest. The VA is not going to pay 8 months of their mortgage. It doesn't work like that. Now, although we may not be able to pay 8 months of your mortgage, there's other resources that may be available that that person can use. But I can't tell that person, oh yeah, come down here, we're going to write a blank check. It's not going to happen. So I don't want to give that false sense out there. I want to be honest with them. Next slide. So what do you do if a veteran or someone expresses suicidal ideation on a phone call? You want to keep that caller on the line. You don't want to transfer that call or hang up. One of the things about not transferring a call is that many of us are working from home now. Many of us, even when we were in the office, we weren't very good at transferring calls. I can at least say that for myself. I'm just not very good at transferring calls because I don't transfer enough calls throughout the year. Now, your switchboard operators and your call center operators, those folks, that's what they do on a daily basis. They transfer calls, they take calls. I get caught up. Okay, what am I supposed to do in transferring this call? Do I press this number? Do I release? Do I hang up? I always end up disconnecting someone. And so really, if someone is suicidal on that line, you definitely don't want to disconnect that call. So don't transfer or hang up. Remain calm. Try to get as much identifying information on the caller as possible. So their name, their phone number, their current location, whatever you can get. Even if they give you a nickname, it doesn't matter. Just get whatever information you can get. Let the other folks figure out who it is and how to get to them. You can conference call to the Veterans Crisis Line, but I will tell you, unless you're really savvy at doing it, I wouldn't recommend doing it. Okay, there are a few people who know how to do it and can do it. Okay. If you can conference call, wait until the responder picks up and you hear them engage with the other person on the phone before you disconnect. Enlist help from your coworkers. Use instant messaging, use Teams, use your cell phone. Do what you have to do in order to get someone to assist you. Okay? If the caller disconnects, call them back immediately. If no answer, you want to go ahead and call 911. Let them know that you were on the phone with this person. They were in a crisis, but somehow the phone got disconnected and you just want a welfare check just to see how that person is doing. You can call the crisis line at 988, press number 1, and give them the information on that veteran or service member. And they'll take it from there. Next slide. So That was your SAVE briefing. Remember, signs of suicidal thinking should be recognized. Ask the most important question of all, and that question is, are you thinking about killing yourself? V, validate that person's experience. Make them feel that they matter, their opinion matters, their voice matters. E, expedite treatment and encourage treatment and expedite getting help. So encourage that person to seek help and help them get to help. Okay, next slide. So now I'm going to go over some quick reference resources that we have. Next slide. So this is the Veterans Crisis Line. In July, it has gone from the 1-800-273-8255 to 988. This has been a huge improvement, especially for folks who don't have working cell phones or telephones or access to phones. They can dial that 988 and press 1 and get the help they need. Anybody can call this line, veterans, service members, family members, friends. You can even call anonymously. Okay. And then, as Mr. Washington mentioned earlier, there's also a text. So they can actually send a text message at 838-255, and they can conversate with the crisis line folks there. Next slide. So that's the same 988. Next slide. So what is 988? So it's the easy way to dial the crisis line. In 2020, we rolled over. One thing to note is that the 1-800-273-8255, that will be around at least for the next 3 to 5 years until everybody transitions over to it. So you can dial either number, but right now we're trying to get people in the mode of just dialing 988. It just makes it so much simpler and it's easy for them to remember. So as of July, we are now using 988. However, if you dial the 10-digit number, you will still get connected to the crisis line. Next slide. So here's the crisis line. It actually stood up in 2007, and we've been going strong since then. We've had over 6 million calls to the crisis line, over 730,000 chats, over 250,000 texts, and over 1 million referrals, and over 230,000 dispatches of emergency services. And when we talk about dispatches of emergency services, we're talking about those emergency services actually going out to where the individual is located. Okay. And when we talk about referrals, the referrals, anytime anyone calls the crisis line, if they're a veteran, a referral will be sent to a local suicide prevention coordinator at one of the VA medical facilities. And that suicide prevention coordinator and their team has 24 hours to reach out to that individual to offer help. So a scenario like this would happen. A person calls the crisis line and says, you know, I want to kill myself. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do it right now. They would send out emergency services right away. And they will also send a consult to the suicide prevention coordinator. So even if that person is rescued and hospitalized, the suicide prevention coordinator will still get a referral, and it's their job to reach out to that individual, okay, to find out what their disposition is to get them connected with services. Now, on the other hand, someone can call the crisis line and say, you know, I'm overwhelmed. I got a lot of stuff going on. I don't want to kill myself, but I just need help. Suicide prevention coordinator would still get a referral, and the same thing applies, 24 hours to reach out to that individual and get them connected with services. Next slide. Don't wait, reach out. That's one of our campaigns that came out last year. And this Don't Wait, Reach Out, it's a website where veterans can go on and find the resources that they need and make them tailored to their needs. So when you go on this website and let's say, you know, the screen pops up and you can select, I need education resources, I need housing resources, and I need medical resources. You click on those three and then you press submit, and then one complete list will come out. So it's like a one-stop shop, but it's a good resource. And then they also have some videos of veterans who sought help, and they're telling their story about getting help. Next slide. Making the Connection, this is another website where we have veterans who have been struggling with mental health issues and substance abuse issues and have recovered, and they're telling their story to empower not only themselves but others to get help. So Making the Connection. So there's a series of vignettes that's on that website along with some resources. Next slide. So the National Shooting Sports Foundation and the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention and the VA have partnered together. And so you will see a lot of these community ads and toolkits that we have that are coming out. We also have collaborated with the Ad Council, and they are doing a lot of free ads for us. You may have seen some of them on TV during big sporting events, NFL games, NASCAR events, where they're talking about safe storage and lethal means. Next slide. KeepItSecure.net. This is another one. And so if you go to that website, you'll learn about the importance of firearm and firearm safety and lethal means. And again, NSSF, we've partnered with them. And so you'll see a lot of information on there. Next slide. So earlier, when I talked about lethal means and educating family members, veterans, and providers, this is one of the brochures that we have where we're reducing firearms and other household safety risks for veterans and their families. And so we have done a big campaign to educate, the entire household. Next slide. These are just some added benefits. We've got some mental health apps here. They're all free. You can download them on your phone. We have PTSD Coach. We have a COVID Coach. Only thing I offer is that if you use apps, I would use them in conjunction with your therapist, just so that they know that you're using these apps. I wouldn't just use them alone and think that this is going to solve everything, but they work really well in conjunction with a provider. Next slide. The PTSD Coach has a safety plan in there. And if you don't know what a safety plan is a written list of coping strategies that an individual can use during a suicidal crisis. You can list all those steps on there and have them on your phone and refer back to them when you need to. So when you have those triggers, what should I do in this situation? And you already have it written down. Next slide. Coaching in the Care. This is another good resource if you have a veteran who is reluctant to receive care. This program can help you coach them into care, and they can actually speak to the individual to coach them into care as well. Next slide. Postvention resources. We don't talk about postvention a lot, but this is where communities really need to educate themselves because, the reality is that we may have some tragedies. And so we have to know how to help the community, help providers, and help the workplace. And so our MyRec has a lot of free resources that can be used. Next slide. VA SAVE training, which is on psycharmor.org. This is one of the organizations that we partner with, and they actually have the SAVE training that I just gave on video. It's about 25 minutes in length, and anyone can take it for free. All they got to do is register on the website, and they can take that training for free. And we do recommend that, all communities, if they can't get a webinar or a live training, to go ahead and take this training online. And they have some other free training on there as well, like military culture and things like that. So that is the end of my presentation. I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to Mr. Walters or
Yes,
Mr. Walker.
ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Ms. Mills, for that very informative presentation. Now we will address any of the questions that are in the Q&A box to the right of the screen. I'll read the questions at this time, and the presenter will provide us a response. We have one question to note from a Miss Casey Saxon. In 2020, I called the crisis line for a veteran in crisis, a neighbor. They told me to call 911. That veteran in crisis ended up arrested. I have read similar scenarios across the country at alarming rates, resulting in arrest and even death by responding officers. What is the VA doing to address this issue?
Well, I can't speak to any specific situation, but I will tell you this, that the VA has partnered with law enforcement to teach crisis training. So I know that that is something that is happening, that crisis training is being taught to law enforcement. And so having them understand some of the issues that veterans are dealing with and how to approach them when there is a crisis situation going on. Hope that answers your question. But there is some training that is going on, collaborative training.
Well, that was the only question. So if you need to reach out to the presenter, please see her point of contact information on the screen. You can also reach out to our team for any information. Our point of contact information is on the screen as well. At this time, I turn the mic over to Mr. Washington, who will provide some closing remarks.
Thank you, Nicholas. Thank you, Lillie, very much for your informative brief once again. Thank you all for joining us today. Thank you for that particular question. I just want to comment on one thing, not so much as it pertains to veterans, but I like Lillie's answer because if we're in the Washington, D.C. area, there have been a rash of outbreaks of drug affiliated issues with the police department across the DMV, which is uh, uh, the the area that we're in here, the DC metro area, and they've also asked specific training to be conducted to the police officers for those who are, dealing with drug addictions, and they actually have to carry some equipment going forward to support that. So I think just across the board, when we talk about veterans, the VA is becoming more aware of what's going on and recognizing that more things need to get done. And sometimes it's really mentioned the training with police officers. So we appreciate you all raising all the issues that maybe the VA isn't aware of. So we appreciate that. But nonetheless, thank you all for joining us, and we look forward to you all joining us again in the future. Take care and be blessed.
Yes, and thank you again for having me.
Absolutely.
If you registered for this event, we will provide you with today's handout, and a recording of this webinar will be provided on our website at a later date. Please subscribe to our website and Facebook for future webinars and information. This adjourns today's webinar. Thank you for joining us.